I would like to welcome Dr. Jessica Grossmeier. Dr. Jessica is the author of Reimagining Workplace Well-being, fostering a culture of purpose, connection, and transcendence. She helps employers identify evidence-based practices that could foster workplace well-being and thriving workforce, I would say. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's quite early. And I want to start by talking a little bit about your book, actually. You have this amazing book that talks about how employee well-being is a priority and how employers can identify methods to actually ensure that they're giving their employees the right platform. Can you talk us a little bit about the methods or the practices that you actually encourage employers to take?
Right. So I've been doing workplace well-being for a while as a researcher. And what I do in this book is I focus on a specific area of well-being that many employers have been overlooking as part of their workplace well-being efforts. And that is what I call really spiritual well-being needs. And so when you look at the research that is published on this, and there are thousands of articles, the way that it is commonly defined includes three elements: that we help employees to find a sense of meaning and purpose in their work, that we help foster connection with coworkers, and that we help employees to connect to something bigger than themselves. And I call that transcendence. And so that's really the focus for this book. I do interweave what I feel are fundamentals for every workplace well-being initiative that an employer puts into place. And so that includes, do you have an environment, a culture that supports whatever programmatic efforts you're doing? And I think that's a really big thing, again, that a lot of employers miss, is they focus so much on what are the right programs and benefits and resources. And sometimes there is oversight in the importance that's needed to make sure our leadership and our organizational support practices are there supporting what we're asking employees to do. So my book brings what I've been doing for 20 years, which is workplace well-being best practices, and this area that is newer to me, workplace spirituality, together. And it looks at what does the research say is really effective.
I think the area is new to a lot of people when it comes to workplace spirituality. You don't think about spiritual practices during the working hours. But I would like to tap a little bit about the bigger picture that you mentioned. And what exactly do you mean by that?
Just to clarify the question, the bigger picture meaning workplace well-being, or the bigger picture meaning employment issues in general?
The bigger picture meaning, how can employees focus on a bigger picture in their workplace that actually enhances their overall performance, for example?
I think what we've heard a lot about is that employees are looking for an organization that really values them as a person, that it values their well-being. They're committing a lot of their time, more than half of their waking hours. And now with sort of a new world of work that we've found ourselves in, the workday has gotten a lot longer. It's more stressful. There are more meetings, and the outlets that employees used to have to feed their own well-being, to nourish their spirit, a lot of those things went away as part of COVID. Some have come back, some haven't. But I know from some of the employees that I've talked to, they've said, I don't have the energy at the end of my day to do anything more than the basics at home. And in terms of their own self-care, they're cutting back on workouts, they're not getting as much sleep. And so I think the bigger picture is really understanding that there has been a cosmic shift in the nature of what is being asked of employees at work. And there has been a re-examination because employees have been, slowly increasing this amount of burden over the past 3 years or so, and they're just tapped, and so we're seeing things like quiet quitting emerge, where people are saying, I'm going to give you what I need to do. I'm going to give you exactly what is needed for my job, but I can't give you the discretionary extra percent because I just don't have it in me anymore. I've been pushing too long, too hard for many, many months, and people are just wiped out. And so we've been missing these periods of recovery, these natural oscillations and periods of high demand and recovery. That's sort of gone away, and it's just sort of been like, boop, now this is the plateau and everybody's kind of hanging out there. And so I think, there's really a renegotiation that needs to happen where employers have to have honest conversations with employees and with themselves about what are we really expecting and what are we going to do to support employees, and to accept that there need to be boundaries around what we're asking people to do.
I think the key word here is boundaries, because I think a lot of people are rewarded for crossing the boundaries within the workplace. So longer working hours, oh, you're a great employee. Working during holidays, oh, you're freaking amazing. That's amazing. But then I want to bring us back to the conversation by asking, so what would be ideal for employees now in this year or moving forward, given that a lot of them, many employees are remote, many employees are hybrid. I mean, different, cultures, or different companies are experimenting with different work culture. So what is it that we could say, okay, this is an ideal formula to make sure that people are learning and developing, and at the same time, they're producing in a way that affects the business positively?
I think, we talked a little bit about boundaries, but I'm also going to use the word priorities. And this needs to happen at a couple of different levels. Organizationally, the organization needs to make some really tough calls on what the priorities are truly going to be. We hear a lot about how managers need to be doing more, how leaders need to be doing more to engage their employees. It's about having authentic conversations and to help with them with their priorities. But the organization, I think, is got too many irons in the fire. And so it's like, well, no, here are the 3 to 5 things we are really going to do hard. And that needs to include, by the way, one of those core strategies needs to be an investment in employee well-being. If that is an add-on, you're not going to see the results that you want. And then I think for individuals to help with the challenges that we've had with people just being exhausted and burnt out, individuals need to take a hard look at what matters most to me. Well, what are my key priorities in my job and in my life? How do we fit those things in? Because we all have a limited amount of day available to us, a limited amount of time. What oscillates and what we have control over is the energy that we give to our minutes and to our moments. And so if we have a crystal clear idea, and it could be something as simple as I'm in touch with what my priorities are for today. And it's just to start at the beginning of the day to say, I know what my priorities are for today. And these are the 3 things I have to hit. And these are the things that are going, to be pushed into tomorrow or nudged forward some way or let go of entirely if I don't get to them. And it's having those conversations every single day and being willing to shift and making sure that the things that you really care about as a person, if that's your family, if that's some of your relationships, if that's your own self-care, then that needs to be on the top 3 more days than it's not. Right. So we can't totally let go of our own self-care all the time. And so these conversations have to be happening at a lot of different levels. We need to be having these conversations with ourselves, with our teams, and our organizational leaders need to be having these conversations. And, this isn't new stuff. We've been talking about this stuff for a long time, but it's not about some new initiative. It's about actually creating the support in the space for people to have this level of reflection, which we haven't had. And so the question is, how do we kind of build practices into our work lives that allow us to take these pauses, these moments of reflection when we have to make a hard choice between, do I do this or do I do this? Do I take care of myself or do I take care of that new demand that just emerged? And then having that conversation of, well, have I said no to myself every day this week? Have I said no to my family every day this week? And am I showing up the way that I want to at work? Having those hard conversations and then allowing that to influence the choices, I think is really important.
I just want to bring in just a final question and ask you, it's a lot more complicated than that. It's a culture thing. I mean, it's difficult. How can multinational companies incorporate such conversations when they're running through different cultures?
Right. So organizations oftentimes aren't calling this spirituality. They're building in presence through mindfulness initiatives, which really is about how do I take each moment and bring more presence and mindfulness into it, whether I'm eating lunch, whether I'm having a difficult conversation with an employee, or if I'm, in a meeting that I'm presenting at. And organizations are bringing whole mindfulness initiatives in where they embed these practices into the workday. You have chief mindfulness officers, you've got leaders at the top role modeling this, and they're finding ways to weave it into the actual workday. So this isn't a set aside thing you do on your own time. And every organization needs to figure out where's the right place for us to start. With Unilever, a multinational company, they have really put their stake in purpose. And they have developed entire cultural initiatives around, we care about what you are passionate about, because they know that if people are able to tap into what they're passionate about and they're able to bring that into their work, that they're going to hit all of the things that they want to be seeing in their employees anyway, right? They're going to be engaged. They're going to be bringing their discretionary effort into their work. So I think organizations need to figure out where to start, which is why I tackle 3 areas in my book: purpose, connection, which is our relationships with our coworkers, and how do we connect with something bigger than ourselves, which oftentimes is about service to other people, to our communities, to our organizations. And so nobody's going to need the same approach. Every organization needs to start somewhere. And if spirituality is not the right word to use, then figure out the language that does align with your organization's culture and with how you think about things. But it comes down to the key piece of creating a culture, fostering a culture through our policies, our environments, our practices, our leaders, our role modeling, our priorities. All of that needs to align around how are we valuing the individual employee as a person, as a whole human being that comes with their own set of passions and desires and priorities, and make that part of the mix and welcome that into the conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jessica.